have traveled from Goi, from Bulawayo, from Mutare, from Masvingo, from Lupane, from Beitbridge, and from every corner of this beautiful nation to converge here in Harare over these 2 days, the 6th and the 17th of July. I want you to look around in this room. We're not just gathering here. We have primary school students, we have high schools, we have universities. This means a lot to us because all that are here gathering are students, are innovators, they are change makers. We are the raw intellect, the creative energy, and the industrial muscle that will drive our country's green economy. We are, without doubt, the future of Zimbabwe. May I say comrades, because this is also a fight. It's a climate fight. It's an innovation fight. So comrades, we are here for a distinct purpose. The theme of this inaugural summit challenges us directly. Bridging the policy gap, aligning NDS2 for people and for the planet. For a long time, climate discourse has felt like something that belongs exclusively in high-level boardroom meetings, written in complex policies that rarely touch the lives of ordinary citizens. I know some of us have been there, we've gone to COP, if we are lucky enough, and some of us have sat in these conferences, we have talked about climate change. But today we're bringing it here at the University of Zimbabwe as students to have a word, to say something, for everyone to hear us speaking. For a long time, climate discourse has felt like something that belongs exclusively to only those that are in the high-level boardroom meetings. But our government's Education 5.0 philosophy has taught us that knowledge must produce goods and services. Our purpose of this summit is to bridge that gap. We are here to take the sustainable targets of the National Development Strategy 2 and translate them into real-world solutions that protect our families, the smallholder farmers, Anasekuru, Anagogo, and all our families. Our innovations must be for the people and be for the planet. Let us completely be honest with each other. Historically, the opportunities to participate in global climate frameworks like COP have been far out of reach. But as students, we are creating something new. We are going to be the delegation that goes there and says a word. And we're going to belong to everyone around the world to talk to them about what are we facing. And also, the innovations that Zimbabwe has. Because I believe, as Zimbabwe students, we have done a lot of work, and I'm really proud because of all the associations that are here, Inexus, Young Dynamics, Disaster Management Student Association, and Climate Control, and all other associations, clubs. We've done great work at our universities, and I'm really proud of us because Zimbabwe is progressing, and Zimbabwe students have been doing great work. As a student coming from the University of Zimbabwe, our nation's premier institution, what excites me is that most of this summit is not a standalone event. The vision being launched here today is completely devolved. It's a national framework. We are not just celebrating an annual national summit here at the University of Zimbabwe. We're launching a sustainable framework where we decentralize thematic forums which will run across all provincial universities. So fellow students, today we're going to tour around the exhibition grounds. We're going to witness a phenomenal mixture of youth and corporate geniuses, and we're going to see all students displaying their advanced technology and their innovations. We are the true custodians and the implementers of Zimbabwe's climate adaptation goals. The attainment for our country's 2030 SDGs rests on our shoulders, and looking at the talent in this room, I know the future is bright. Let us not take fiercely, debate passionately, and innovate relentlessly over these 2 days. I thank you. The University of Zimbabwe loves you. Ideate, innovate, industrialize. Kugona nekuita. Amhlope, makorokoto. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Elaine. Powerhouse. I think you're going to avert a number of disasters, not create them. You know, you meet some people, they just create disasters. Stay away from those type of people. We've got our child president, Tanashi, right now in board meetings with hierarchies, so he's not with us right now. However, I'd like you to go to the screens, take a look, a little visual of what tomorrow looks like as we watch these videos and we see what our role is, when we see how small we are, that we're but a vapor, and it looks a little bit like this. Folks, we're all going to get older. But our environment could either copy us, be a duplicate of our mind share, our mindset, our inaction, or we can do something about it. We have a chance. We have a very practical chance. And you're young. But as you get to my age and as you go a little older, you realize that this picture could be us. Now, we can't stop aging. But we can start replenishing our environment. So we can look back when we're a little bit older and say we did it. And we did it here today at this summit, the Zimbabwe Students' Climate Innovation Summit. So take one last picture. What are we going to look like in time? What are we going to do with our time? And now introduce Accelerating the Green Energy Clash. This is going to be a powerful combination of the University of Zimbabwe, as we welcome your representative, versus the National University of Science and Technology, adjudicated by Russell Mushinya. Welcome, teams. Deputy Director, Mitigation, Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife, Mr. Love Modoba is in town. He might be in the debriefing. However, we're about to start that debate. So if we could please have both representatives from both institutions come forward now, and we'll get ready to start that. UZ NUST begins next. And as they're getting ready to go, Zimbabwe should prioritize universal energy access, industrial growth, while accelerating the transition to renewable energy, regardless of the global call to phase out coal use. That may or may not happen, but let's just see how the debate team does. Welcome, team. We're looking forward to seeing you. Both teams will present. You as audience will choose, and our adjudicator will decide. Come forward, beautiful people. Bring your beautiful minds, your arguments, make them succinct and quick. We're going to hand over to you, and we'll begin in order. UZ and NUST. May I please see the UZ representative? Welcome. We're going to hand over to you now. Are you ready?
Yes,
Are you going to win?
of course.
I love the confidence. Hold that thought. NUST, come here. It's a must. When you're with NUST, are you going to win?
Yes.
All right. You said that with emphatic, but you're going to make the vote. Russell, you'll decide. So I'm going to hand over to you, folks. Do you want to use the podium? All right. Over to you. Off you go. All the very best of luck. All right, here we go. Okay, for adjudication, if we could please have our other adjudicators ready to go, and they are?
Thomas and Anna Mapiseni.
Thank you, you can join us. All right, the debate begins now. Use it.
Honorable Chief Adjudicators, honorable members here present, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed opponents. The motion before this House today is, this House believes that Zimbabwe should phase out coal only after reaching universal energy access, regardless of the NDC 3.0 timelines. Now, what this side of the House values, ladies and gentlemen, is sequencing and not speed. In Shona we say, "Fawiramboma, usiku urefu." Ladies and gentlemen, in Zimbabwe, the order of
In Zimbabwe's energy transition, the order of priorities matters in this house. Before we phase out coal, we are saying that every Zimbabwean must have access to affordable, reliable, modern energy. Now, we are not saying that we should not phase out coal. The question is, when should we phase out coal? The question before this house is whether should Zimbabwe complete that transition before achieving universal energy access simply to satisfy a deadline. Rather, as this side of the house, we say firmly no. Now, our redefinition of the motion, when we say phase out, we mean the gradual retirement of coal-fixed electricity once reliable alternative energy sources are capable of sustaining Zimbabwe's electricity. Secondly, universal energy access is defined as every Zimbabwe having access to reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy, consistent with Sustainable Development Goal number 7. When we speak of regardless of NDC 3.0 timelines, we do not mean abandoning Zimbabwe's international climate commitments, but where timelines, ladies and gentlemen, conflict with Zimbabwe's development realities, then universal energy access should therefore determine the pace at which we should move. Now, our full redefinition of this motion, ladies and gentlemen, is this House believes that Zimbabwe should adopt a people-centered, sovereign, and development-orientated energy transition where complete phase-out is sequenced after achieving universal energy access, even if requiring flexibility in timelines. Ladies and gentlemen, this debate is not coal versus renewable energy, or is it coal climate denial versus climate action. This debate is about Zimbabwe's sovereign right to choose the sequence of its development. What are we prioritizing, development or sustainability? I'll take you after this. Now, what takes precedence before this House? Are we saying that we should let go of our national realities, or we should subordinate these realities to predetermined implementations by the NDC 3.0 timelines? What we are proposing in this House, ladies and gentlemen, is that every sovereign nation, Zimbabwe being one of them, has the right to choose the pathway that best serves its people. Climate commitment should support development, not undermine it. Now, what we are envisioning, ladies and gentlemen, what we are envisioning, according to Vision 2030 and the National Development Strategy number 2, is a Zimbabwe which is striving to industrialize. It's a Zimbabwe which is striving to eradicate poverty. It's a Zimbabwe which is striving to create employment. And all these ambitions require one, ladies and gentlemen, indispensable strategy, and that is reliable electricity. We cannot industrialize in the dark, can we? No! Ladies and gentlemen, reliable...
Don't industrialize in the dark. Hold that thought, because you're a powerhouse. I wish we could plug you into our national grid and we'd all have lights. Right, POI, go.
Right, so if your child is going to be about sovereignty, please explain how NDCs take that away, since they're nationally determined. Zimbabwe decides what to commit to based on their own capacity. But to prove that sovereignty is taken away, use specific mechanisms that really prove that you take away sovereignty, don't just say it.
Thank you, panelists. I'll be getting to that. Open your ears very well. Moving on, energy is not merely another commodity. Energy is the foundation upon which a country industrializes. Energy is the foundation upon which a country builds its foundation. Now, it is the foundation upon which healthcare is built. We cannot have hospitals in the dark. We cannot have children studying without light. And coal is fundamental in our energy access. Ladies and gentlemen, let me speak to you statistically. Now, coal provides Zimbabwe with 56.7% of its electricity. And we are saying we should do away with that? Absolutely not. Without electricity, this country fails to industrialize. Without electricity, this country fails to move on. This is why SDG 7, Sustainable Development Goal number 7 says, it does not merely call for clean energy, ladies and gentlemen. It calls for reliable, affordable, modern energy. Not only clean energy, we want reliable energy. Now, if there is one statement that irritates everyone in this house, no, in fact, irritate is an understatement. If there's one statement which scratches everyone in this house, is Magetaend. Why? Because it stops development. Why? Because it stops me from doing my online meetings. Why? Because it stops healthcare. Ladies and gentlemen, our argument being prematurely phasing out coal risks worsening electrical shortages. According to Zimbabwe's National Energy Compact, I'm getting there, coal provides 56.7%, ladies and gentlemen, and hydropower 35%, ladies and gentlemen. Are we saying we should phase out this coal so that we can stay in the dark? If we phase out coal, ladies and gentlemen, I would not be speaking on this mic because there would not be my guessing. Now, opposition asked us to remove our largest source of power in this house before replacing it. Now, what they are simply asking us to do is to burn a bridge whilst we are waiting for another bridge to be built. That is absolute wishful thinking, ladies and gentlemen. Now, ZERA consistently emphasized importance of maintaining energy security while diversifying the country's energy mix. Opposition will come here again and they will repeat NDC 3.0 this, NDC 3.0 that, clean energy source. But let me tell you the purpose of NDC 3.0. Opposition, open your ears. It is not simply to satisfy dates. It is to develop sustainable development while addressing climate change. We do not only want to address climate change, ladies and gentlemen, we also want to make sure that Zimbabwe is developed. Now, timelines are instruments, but they do not act as substitutes. NDC 3.0 is a roadmap and not the destination. What do we want for Zimbabwe? Now, we introduce to you a dual-track transition, whereby we are saying we have hydroelectricity, we have wind, we have solar, and coal is also involved because it is a reliable source of electricity. Now, Zimbabwe cannot industrialize in the darkness, ladies and gentlemen. We are saying let every hospital have light first. We are saying let every child of Zimbabwe be able to study without a candlelight, but with an actual light. We are saying let's light up Zimbabwe first, then we cannot do away with coal. Let me remind you once again, proposition is not proposing that we should not phase out coal. We should phase out coal. We do want clean energy, but at what cost? Firstly, let's prioritize Zimbabwe. Let's serve Zimbabwe's best needs. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, the proposition side has never been prouder to propose. Thank you.
Thank you. Powerful. Megawatts packaged in a beautiful mind to be counteracted by Nust. Let's hear. Let's hear it for them. Now remember, folks, our adjudicators are here, but you're going to vote by the sound of your voice and by the raising of your hands. Over to you, 5 minutes, and then we'll go into POIs.
Okay. Am I audible? Okay, speech beginning in 3, 2, 1. Panel, public, please note. Opposition is not here to say that we want people to live in darkness. That is not the debate. That is not the motion. That is, quite frankly, uncharitable. This debate is about what Zimbabwe is going to invest in. Are we going to invest in more coal-active incentives, or are we going to look toward renewable energy? It is quite uncharitable for the proper team to come up here and skewer this debate. At the heart of it, universal energy access is something we all want, we all concede to. The question becomes, what is the best strategy for us to get this outcome? This is the debate we're ready to begin the debate, finally. First things first, what are the main actors and what do we need to know? We think that there's been a lot of flagging of important mechanisms and important structures. What is the NDC3 and what does it imply and why is the timeline really important? We think Zimbabwe already agreed that by 2035 they would have reduced the global emissions by 43% towards 48%. Why is this really important? Because it directly engages with the idea of coal incentives, or like coal power plants. But second off, this then contradicts our national development strategy because then we want to industrialize, then we want universal energy access. This is the core clash. The clash is what is the best policy and what is the best strategy to get the outcomes we want. To evaluate this panel or general public, I need you to do three things. In whatever the speech tells you, I need you to analyze how does the average Zimbabwean survive, how does Zimbabwe look like after this, but most importantly, are we able to survive with it? But a couple of engagement. Number one, we think in their world panel, we think when you already have neighborhoods that are struggling to get access to energy, it then becomes very counterintuitive to invest more into coal. But second off panel, we think at the point in time the whole globe is moving towards renewable sources of energy, it becomes very, again, counterintuitive to invest into more power plants panel when the world is evolving. We think the best track for Zimbabwe would be to catch onto that train. But also panel, now then what happens even if we do this action? What is the analysis panel? We think we leave Zimbabwe vulnerable. At the point in time, global warming is not just a conversation about one country, it's a conversation about the globe. We think we ought to strategize and leave Zimbabwe in a place where they're able to be protected whilst vulnerable. We ought to have different alternatives, and that's what we fight for. But number two panel, we think you set a wrong precedence. At the point in time, Zimbabwe directly refuses to engage with the timelines. You set a wrong precedence for the other countries, that global warming is not your problem panel. We think Zimbabwe ought to engage with the world panel and adhere to like what this means and how we're protecting each other panel. But most importantly panel, we think the problem then becomes the mentality behind this action. The exact same way my mother tells me not to procrastinate because I'll eventually not do it panel. We think when we don't directly take this hard stance and say we're going to start the phase out now, there becomes an idea of inevitability and how we remain vulnerable within the comfort. But then now what happens in our world and what do we fight for? Number one, we think there are already existing mechanisms within Zimbabwe that we love and appreciate, then make sure that we're strategically placed. Yes, sure.
Okay, so you say that we need green energy. So Zimbabwe is emitting like 0.06% of the global carbon emissions. Why would it be fair for Zimbabwe to phase out coal compared to other powers like China emitting 30%?
Hear me out, panel. Hear me out, panel. The problem with that statement is that he assumes he can't see the clouds within Kariba. The problem is that he does not acknowledge that Zimbabwe is getting affected by this problem. It is not just one country's problem, it is the globe's problem. And Zimbabwe ought to acknowledge that and engage with that. I think I'm done with that. But then second off, what is our core argument? Number one. Okay, continue. So what is our core argument and what are the levers that we think Zimbabwe already has that places it strategically? Number one, the least cost geospatial electrification plan, an already existing Ministry of Energy planning tool underpinning the national electrification strategy that maps out the cheapest way to connect every unconnected household, grid extension where viable, off-grid, and mini off-grid where it isn't. Why is this really important, panel? Because we think we ought to be strategic. The problem then becomes how best do we engage with the households that don't have power, that don't have electricity, panel. We think this becomes a key lever to be strategic in terms of where then we push for more coal-based electricity or where then we then push for more renewable sources of energy. But number two, we think the carbon trading law is really important. Within Zimbabwe's newly established Carbon Markets Authority and legal framework become really important because they help us monetize verified emissions and reductions for mini-grid rollout and avoid coal generation by recycling these finances directly into like further electrification. But most importantly, panel, the most beautiful bit. We think Zimbabwe is already part of the Southern African power pool and co-owns the plant Batoka Gorge and the hydro project with Zambia, both a real and existing regional firm capacity options. We think that the idea that Gov tells you that Zimbabwe automatically will be in darkness is wrong and uncharitable. We think Zimbabwe right now is at the point in time it ought to pivot in terms of strategy. We think it is very odd to say that you're going to lose sovereignty, panel. Sovereignty doesn't mean making a random decision. Sovereignty means making a decision that benefits the country, benefits the people. We don't think sovereignty is from what looks like from what they say, right? So what do we tell you from panel from OPSAT? First off, we want to do what is best for Zimbabweans and the Zimbabwean government. We want to ensure that there is longevity. This method ought to protect Zimbabwe from vulnerable moments. But not only that, we think Zimbabwe ought to engage with the global problem. Final PI. We're winning. Okay, cool. But most importantly, we think we reach universal energy access quicker. Why is this really important? We think when you target vulnerable communities and you're strategic with the panel, you think we close the gaps. We think the reason why we value the timeline, number one, is that we avoid a precedence. The reason why we love the timeline too, panel, is that we stick to it, panel, and we stick to our commitments. But not only that, panel, we think that it's feasible for us to get these goals, but most importantly, we are able to adhere to this. We think Vision 2030, we get there quicker, panel, 7 minutes. We get there quicker, panel, and we're able to ensure that Zimbabwe is strategically aligned for whatever comes. We protect the people, we protect the vulnerable, people have access to energy. That's not the debate. The debate is about strategy, and we win on this. Thank you.
Okay, I'm about to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Okay, panel. Understand that the idea of having like renewable energy and using green energy is a really cute argument to say, and it's actually something that is good for the country. But then this is a country that is existing pragmatically. We need practical solutions. It's not practical for you to say you want to phase out something that is sort of like giving you the majority of the energy that the country is using. We think that this is going to be creating a problem. So very important clarities that we need in this debate, right? Valerie successfully tells you why we should sort of like value the citizens and the sovereignty of the citizens, right? So I'm going to prove to you why that is threatened by focusing on a timeline rather than focusing on an objective. The objective here is simple. It's universal energy access, making sure that every single person in every single aspect, that is to say a person in Zimbabwe, she shouldn't be struggling to find electricity because the grid hasn't reached that place yet. This should be the priority. Now, one thing that is very important, right? So from opposition, they tell us that Zimbabwe should sort of like catch on to this global trend to phase out coal. We think that this is a very cute trend, and we think that a country that is developed as the United States of America is in a better position to do this because they have money to invest in these particular renewable solutions. Vision 2030 itself simply sort of like admits that Zimbabwe is still developing and wants it to develop. We think that at a point in time when this country is still struggling to develop, we need to use all the resources that are in our approximate, or the resources that are immediately available to us, and coal is something that is very pivotal to that. Wait, I'll take you later. So what this then means is this: what coal is doing is we are using it for electricity, right? We're using it to industrialize, right? And the problem now, that we then have is, as
it currently stands in status quo. Coal is not even producing enough energy for the country. Universal energy access rate in Zimbabwe is currently kept at 67%. When it is kept at 67%, it is 85% in urban areas and something around 30% in rural areas. But then the problem is, urban areas don't even cover the majority in terms of sort of like the size of the land that they cover. So that is a very big majority of the places in Zimbabwe don't have access to the energy yet. What this then tells you is this: the priority for Zimbabwe right now is not to sort of like focus on how you're producing the energy that you're producing. The priority is making sure that energy is able to get to all the places, and coal is very instrumental to this. Why? Because the country already has investments in coal. Why? In 2023, there was sort of like development of Unit 7 and 8 in Hwange, which increased the capacity of Hwange, right? We think that trying to sort of like stop these investments in order to catch on to a global trend is something that is not important. The chart on sovereignty then comes here. Why? What we then tell you is Zimbabwe developing is depending on these things, right? But the globe developing is moving towards other things. Zimbabwe, then the government then comes to a point whereby they need to then prioritize their own people. When coal is working towards developing people and making sure energy is available for everyone, we think that it is more principally justified for the government to focus on sort of like using this coal because it is a resource that is available. So what opposition can tell us that coal is sort of like emitting carbon and sort of like polluting the environment, we're going to tell you that that is true. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of sort of like percentages and how this is happening, the carbon that is being emitted by Zimbabwe is negligible, something around 0.06%. China, a very developed powerhouse, is emitting something like 30%. And because they know the value of the money that they get and that they prioritize their people having money and potential to do this, they're not even thinking about stopping it. So I think that it's unfair for Zimbabwe to then stop it. And Zimbabwe trying to phase out coal to sort of like catch on to this trend. That is where the contradiction then comes between the well-being of the country and the people that are proximate to that country and sort of like becoming a good country to the globe. We think that we don't really care if people in America view us as a country that is caring about the environment when I don't have electricity in my home. I think that that is something that is sort of like bad if the government decides to do that. I will check a POI.
Okay, Rachel, I think you are a South Technologies champion. You can do better. This is a policy motion. I want you to mechanize how your policy is going to look like and how it achieves that universal access.
Right. I'm going to get to that right now. So what we want the country to do is not to say that we're going to be using coal. What we want is for the country to be sort of like integrating the phasing out of coal. And what we want the country to do this without any timelines in mind. We don't care about 2035. If we achieve universal energy access next year, it's a good thing. If we achieve it in 2050, then it's a good thing. But we don't phase out coal until we have that. What we want to do right now is we want to achieve universal energy access like this. What is happening is the country is not producing enough energy that meets the demand, right? So any form of policies that should be made by the country are sort of like meant to sort of like deal with that demand. What does this mean? It means that instead of encouraging people to use electric stoves in their home, you sort of like make sure everyone is using gas stoves. Make sure everyone is using sort of like solar-powered refrigerators. What this then does is it reduces the national demand for electricity. People don't demand on the grid. You are sort of like giving people potential to build off-grid like solar systems that they use for electricity, right? People have access to the energy, right? At the same time, the nation is sort of like having more room to sort of like invest money in the rural electrification program, which is doing a tremendous job, by the way, but it's operating at a very slow pace, which is proximate to Zimbabwe. And using the current pace that they're using, they will never have achieved universal energy access by 2035. And I think that sticking to this is a problem. Why? Because the problems being faced by Zimbabwe are different to the problems being faced by Senegal or America or China. So we think that any particular policy that Zimbabwe should sort of like try to implement, it should have the Zimbabweans at heart first, even if it then doesn't, even if it means we then have to exit the even if it means we have to exit some international treaties in order to sort of like achieve this particular development. We think that this is something that is justified. Why? Because the government is for the people and you serve the people. So what we then want to achieve is this. There is a difference between a person living in Chiweshe not being able to put electricity in their house because the grid hasn't reached that place, and the difference between a person living in a place where the grid is there but they don't have money to put it there. We think that that particular term we can sort of like say is the responsibility of the citizen. We want the government to do its part in making sure that energy has reached everywhere. There shouldn't be a clinic, a hospital, or any government, or any place rather that hasn't had sort of like the grid hasn't reached there yet. And we think that we should focus on expanding these things. The chart on phasing out coal shouldn't even be in Zimbabwe right now. Why? Because we need it for development. And we think that if we use coal correctly for development, we then get more money from the investment that you get to then sort of like we get more money to then invest in renewable energy. So coal is the resource that we have. Let's use it to become a developed country. Once we're a developed country, we can then start talking about sort of like these renewable energy sources that you want. But as of now, it's what we have. You can't tell me that I have Zig, I can't go buy sort of like buns in a shop because I'm hungry, I need to find US dollar first. I'll use what I have. We have coal, so let's use coal. Let's not listen to anyone that's sort of like saying that we don't have coal, it's a bad environment and all. So
Thank you.
I think I'll leave Tinashe to finish this.
It's heating up. Nast, Prince, you're up. Thank you, Yuzed. We're climatizing to a close on this debate, perhaps. Two sides, you decide. Prince, over to you. 5 powerful minutes, we will extend it. Go.
Okay, confirm I'm clearly audible. Right. So I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. Panel, David Hume once said behavior is guided by customs and habit, but I want to expand on that particular philosophy. I think human beings are anti or counter change like naturally, simply because they have this like legitimate bias towards things that they've experienced. For example, you are more likely to prefer something that you are likely familiar with or that you've experienced because the unknown in of itself is abstract to you, so you are more likely to villainize it and think it's bad. That is the current thing that aligns a lot with climate behavior. Was that necessarily true? I think when it comes to prospective planning of changing habits or abandoning something, you necessarily need people to make strong commitments for that to be effective enough. What does that look like in a simplistic analogy? I think at individual level, each and every person in this room, if you're to likely always plan to say that you're going to stop using plastics that are harmful to the environment, maybe in the next 2 years or whatsoever, you're less likely to even do that in the very first place because you're going to always constantly try to rationalize why you're more likely going to still need those plastics and why you're going to continuously not have that particular timeline. This is the very important reason why timelines are very important when it comes to the climate chart. You don't necessarily need to be giving us this whole, like, I think, prospective arguments like, oh no, at some point we're going to phase out. We need clear commitments as a globe if we're going to solve these climate issues. Let's get straight into OP, right? I think there's a lot of fluff in their case. Let's call off the bluffs, right? First things first, I think Noma beautifully set up to you what this debate looks like. This debate is not government getting energy or getting electricity and opposition not getting the electricity. I think it's about how you get electricity. What they need to specifically defend is why effectively coal gives you better electricity. The only claim and the only mechanism they have to that particular argument is to tell you that Zimbabwe currently has investments in coal, so because of that, and that the grid is likely dependent on a 60% production of energy through coal, then it means we have to stick to it. Notice something important, panel. I think the funny thing is, a lot of Zimbabweans here are very familiar with the idea of load shedding, not just for minutes or hours, but for days. A lot of businesses and small SMEs have to close up shop sometimes early, simply because they don't have electricity generation. In the same economy, they are trying to defend and say it already uses coal in the very first place. I think that needs to change in the very first place. I think, two, this is the prioritization debate. Their case is very contradictory to that, because you can't be claiming that Zimbabwe currently emits less in terms of emissions. Why shouldn't it continue to emit? And you're prioritizing. When you prioritize something, it means you want to increase and expand operation in of itself in emitting. So it sounds more like, oh no, we're emitting less, so let's start emitting more. I don't get that particular principle and argument in the very first place, how it works, right? But I think let's get straight into the case in of itself and how it should look like in this debate, right? I think the first thing that you need to understand, right, about this debate, it's a prioritization debate. It means one thing: both of these policies are legitimate. Government does want to reduce climate issues and impact. Government also does want to generate energy, but also to industrialize and have growth. Why is this important? It's important because prioritization only happens when these policies, even though they are all beautiful and particularly policies that are relevant, but they start to be in conflict, i.e., for you to build more generation of electricity through coal, it means you need to invest more in creating more power plants that align with coal. But two, it means you need to divert resources that would have likely helped a lot of people that are currently suffering climate issues into particularly creating that generation. three, it means for you to create these spaces in the very first place, you'll need to cut down thousands of trees that particularly are going to cause more harm to the climate in the very first place. But four, it means you're going to have to reallocate people and indigenous communities and spaces that currently exist so that you can create this power generation, but you're going to affect people directly in that particular scenario in the very first place. It's not a debate where they can easily co-opt benefits from saying that you're going to still care more about climate action. They need to defend like prioritization, not be ambiguous about it. Like pure eye, very fast.
Okay.
The smartest
that
though.
Zimbabwe is not producing enough energy and we have load shedding is only evidence that we need to utilize the coal in a more efficient
No, this is why you don't get the debate. The idea is, you say it means we need to utilize coal more. On our side, we're saying you need to diversify. I don't think energy security is not just it's just about depending on one source of electricity or energy. You need more to substantiate that. On our side, you get solar, like mini grids from solar power generation. You get hydroelectric power. You get regional like power grids and loops that Noma talks about, like the Batoka project. So you still get energy access on our side of the world. If the problem is that you don't have enough access to energy in the very first place. But three, notice the bluff here. If the world is already redirecting into more greener solutions, it means investor behavior and markets are particularly in favor of that. One, you're not only losing funding, but you're also losing the better comparative market prices that are going to be good for you to import the materials you need to build this power station in the very first place. Because the trajectory is simple. If the world is moving away from like power generation through coal, it means they're not always also like creating more like infrastructure that aligns with generating power through coal. It means for you to gain access to even the materials you need in the very first place, it's going to be much more difficult for you. But two, it's going to be more expensive. It means for a country like Zimbabwe that is still developing, you're unlikely to get that. But notice what like green energy and efficiency is premised upon. It's usually premised upon cost efficiency in the very first place. It's premised upon bridging the gaps that these countries have in terms of not having enough capacity. So it means you're more likely to have better opportunities of you creating more stable grids on our side of the world, because there is more cutting-edge scientific discoveries and innovation that allow you to particularly create better projects in the very first place. But look at it prospectively in the future, right? Because we're not only debating this debate about just now. In the next 5 years, you'll still have more incentives of research and science that is trying to develop more and better solutions to make sure those greener solutions exist better. What you're going to do as Zimbabwe, if you don't particularly look into that, is you're going to be a country that is behind, whereas most countries are particularly in front of you. You lose that like an advantage of alignment in of itself, but also becoming a better economy. But when you're now trying to pursue it, you're more likely going to have a hard time really establishing most of that like diversification in those grids or transitioning into energy sufficiency. But three, like notice something about the metric that they're trying to use. It's very ambiguous because one, when you create more success in their side of the world through industrial growth, you create more industries that need electricity. You create more homes that want electricity in the very first place. So it means your measure of like universal energy access is going to be hard to measure. Why? Because the moment you have more access to energy, the more you create demand for that energy, because you have more industries that need electricity. They don't show you why at any point in the side of the world they're going to start deciding that it's now time to commit to climate goals or to these timelines, because they're always going to consistently chase energy access and efficiency. But three, notice it's very arbitrary to really measure particularly that energy efficiency access. You need a lot of resources poured by a country to measure how many people really now have access. But three, notice currently that most people in Zimbabwe are in rural places and rural areas that are 60 kilometers away from power stations or points of generation of electricity. For you to increase that generation, it's not about you just focusing on more coal. It's about you making sure that electricity that has been generated through coal gets accessed by people in rural areas. You need to build more power lines. That is likely going to be more costly than comparatively having mini grids in these communities that are particularly more greener, efficient, and less cost incentive. But four, notice how most probably power stations last for things like 60 or many years, but also because they're expensive, people and states are more likely to have incentives to invest and be trapped in them. So you trap Zimbabwe economically and politically into that one metric and structure that is going to make it harder for them to then start transitioning, because they're more likely going to invest in that particular like comparative in of itself. Government's case at best is a very big bluff. They don't prove to you comparatively why at any point they're going to industrialize better. But true, industrial growth is not just affected by coal. It's a micro macroeconomic thing. So you have many factors. You have crisis management, crises that can rise from climate and still affect that industrial growth. So you're more likely not going to even achieve that industrial growth, rather than focusing on climate action immediately right now and say that you're going to first create growth and then focus on climate at the very end. I think at that best, they don't have any case, they don't have better mechanism to that particular extent.
We thank you. If words were a force, we wouldn't need turbines. Thank you. Tinashe, you now present possibly the final voice from your side before the vote, which is pending in the future. Over to you in 3, 2, go.
A popular saying in my culture goes a little like this. Usakurumize kumeza, kutsenga kuchada. Do not rush to swallow before you chew. As such, Zimbabwe should not and cannot rush to phase out coal use before we secure universal access to energy. To have renewable energy, ladies and gentlemen, to have all those sources they are talking about, we need energy to build them up. How do we build them up if we do not have universal access to the energy to set them up in the first place? Transition requires sequence, and our model is very simple. Our model is that we secure reliable energy first, and then we retire coal later on. Not the other way round, right? So we prioritize grid stability, and our transition protocol is that first we get universal access to energy, and then everything else comes later. That's how simple our case is. I will not dwell much on that, as Ritual and Valerie have already done that. Now to get into my rebuttals, first speaker comes here and talks about how not procrastinating. This just speaks into the first point I told you, ladies and gentlemen. We cannot rush into conclusions before we have sustainable solutions that we know are going to last. So Valerie comes and gives you an analogy of how they tell you they are going to burn a bridge before they've built another bridge, and they want to cross to the other side of the river. How do they cross that? How do they cross to the other side? We still don't get that mechanization from side proposition, right? She also talks about how Zimbabwe is experiencing droughts and climate change. But we still think that the burden of Zimbabwe having droughts and climate change is not on Zimbabwe only, because as Vishwa has already told you, Zimbabwe only contributes 0.06% of the carbon emissions that cause these droughts and climates. The thing with droughts and climate change, ladies and gentlemen, is that even if it happens in the United States, which contributes 11%, or happens in China, which contributes 30%, Zimbabwe still runs the risk of experiencing it, because we're on one earth, and it doesn't matter where that is. So when they come here and talk about how Zimbabwe experiences droughts and climate change, we still would face it even if we stopped the thermal power production in Zimbabwe. We still would face this, because we tell you that Zimbabwe only contributes to 0.06%. And are you really telling me that we should stop producing power? We should stop producing power in a country that's producing 0.06% of carbon emissions simply because we want to prioritize some other country that's producing like 30% or 11%, such as the United States and China, as we told you. I will not take you. She also, first speaker also goes to paint our idea of sovereignty as though it means that we are rushing to a decision just because it's pro-Zimbabwe. Not only that, yes, we are rushing to a solution because it is pro-Zimbabwe, right? But not only that, we meant that Zimbabwean sovereignty looks like prioritizing Zimbabwean citizens without power, before we please the international community. We think that at a point in time when the government or the people in power, right, start to try and please the international community at COP31 or at some Paris agreement, before they meet the needs of their voters, before they meet the need of their citizens, then they have failed as a government. And that is why we simply support that they prioritize universal access for their people before they start to meet this deadline that are set by the global north, right? Second speaker takes the stage and talks about how we are experiencing load shedding already under thermal power station. So under thermal power, right? So we come here and tell you, okay, so thermal power is not sufficient enough to supply the whole of Zimbabwe, and their solution is that we shut it down.
the little power that we have is not here anymore. Does that make any sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? Clearly, it doesn't. But we come here and tell you that we will venture into these renewable sources after thermal power has been able to supply Zimbabwe well enough to improve economically, to improve industrially, so that it has the power to then invest in such things, right?
Point
So,
of information.
I'll take you.
Okay, I think it was very simple, the burden on your side. You need to prove to us, if you identify the problem that we can't access energy right now, you need to show us how your policy is going to solve that problem in the first place.
That has already been said in the first and second speech. I will not get into that. My job is rebutting as a third speaker. Second speaker also takes a stake, right? Their chat on diversification, right? They come here and tell us that they want to diversify so that they come here and tell you that we want to diversify. But then we think that to be able to diversify, you have to put your best foot forward first. So ladies and gentlemen, these countries that have been able to diversify, we need to take into account that at some point in time, they used thermal power because it is cheaper, it was reliable, and it was what was accessible at that point. It was only until the economies were strong enough to support these renewable sources that they then moved to us. So why should the goalposts change because it is now Zimbabwe that is using thermal power energy? That doesn't make any sense. So ladies and gentlemen, if you take one thing from us today is that we cannot compete where we don't compare. First you want to compare, then we compete with the global north. So they come here and tell us, okay, we want to produce geothermal in Zimbabwe, which is from underground volcanoes, right? We cannot do that before we have that full capacity of the thermal power stations to even build that first. So this speaks into how we cannot compete before we compare, right? So ladies and gentlemen.
2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, before I leave this stage, I just want to pose a question to the atmosphere or to the room. Who else in this house is tired of being referred to as Africa, the dark continent? Please show by raise of hands. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the eyes have it. Everyone in this room is tired of Zimbabwe being the dark continent, right? So how then do we prioritize something that makes our continent darker? Because we say that coal is readily accessible to Zimbabwe. It is readily accessible to Africa, right? So if we are to make our continent a light one, so they say, we are to prioritize what we have today, and that is coal, right? So they come here and talk about how the international community has already moved to renewable sources, right? That was your whole case. So we come here and tell you that Zimbabwean problems are unique to Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe cannot carry the burden of climate change or of carbon emissions, because we've already told you that Zimbabwe's contribution to carbon emissions is negligible. That's one. And we think that at a point in time where that is the case, we prioritize Zimbabwe providing energy to that family in Mzarabani, to that one school in Binga, before we prioritize America dropping bombs on Iran and then causing a much larger damage to the climate, right? Which is like 11%, as we have already stated. So we think that at the point in time when that is the case, right, Zimbabwe should focus on its thermal power, because already it is negligible, because already it produces negligible amount of carbon emissions as compared to the international community. Zimbabwe should follow its development timeline and not external pressures that ignore local realities. We come and give you our case in which energy, access, and sustainability are complementary and not necessarily competing. How are they complementary? We come here and tell you we get energy access first and then we focus on sustainability later. They just want to focus on sustainability. We don't hear them talk about how they are going to achieve energy access, and we think that is problematic in this debate session. As we wrap our case up, I want to tell you about NDS2, National Development Strategy 2, and NDC 3.0. NDS2 aims to achieve universal access to reliable, affordable, sustainable, and clean energy by 2030. And then NDC3, which was made by Zimbabwe and for Zimbabwe at the Paris Agreement, right, is that nationally determined contribution between 2025 to 2035, climate commitment at the Paris Agreement to reducing greenhouse gas emissions per capita by 40% by 2035. So ladies and gentlemen, as I've already stated to you, NDS2, the National Development Strategy, aims to give Zimbabwe, all Zimbabweans power by 2030, and then NDC by 2035, which shows you that even in status quo, our goal is to give Zimbabwe power before we even get to 2035. But then in the event that we don't do that, we are not going to stop using thermal power, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The debate is heating up. We're closing out with Russell coming up next. If you're just joining us, it's about 2 degrees hotter in this room than it was when we started, and that's called climatic brain warming. Now we're ready for you, Russell. Thank you. Give us the closing arguments before our adjudicators give us their say. And then we'll take the vote. Chinoy versus Nust. Should I say Yusef versus Nust?
Confirm I'm audible. Yeah. Shout out to Nast. Yeah. I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, start. I think this debate was very, very simple. It's a policy debate. It means that you need to mechanize what your policy looks like. I think on government, what we get, I think Prince already says there's a lot of bluff on what their mechanisms look like. We don't get a clear mechanism as to how they solve the problem. I think when you identify a problem in a debate, you need to show us solvency. The extent of their case is to say, just because we have coal, we need to use that. But one thing that they miss in their entire chart is the first thing. Coal is finite. It's a resource that ends. We think because they are unable to acknowledge that fact, we think they are also unable to have any comparative advantage on top of us. Let's just get into response material. The extent of their case is 1. We think premature phase out means we will be in the dark. We don't think that is the comparative. On our end, what we'll tell you is we think a strategy that exists better in terms of how it gives universal access and has much more global alignment is something that acts better. We think the comparative they push on us or the bait and they say opposition is trying to defend is darkness, but we don't think that is the extent of their case. But even if that was the extent, it means on our side, if we prove to you that our alternative reaches universal energy access better than they do, we think we already win on that metric. You need to prove how your policy will solve the energy access. It's not enough for you to tell us we are unable to meet the energy demands currently, but then you still want to sustain the very same policy that is unable to reach the energy access in essence. I think we wanted more mechanization on how we are going to get better energy demand on that access. But secondly, they tell us, oh my gosh, we think just because we have negligible emissions and we don't have the emissions that are contributed by most individuals in society like other states, it's reason enough in principle for us not to align. But we think the problem exists far much better than what the alignment or in terms of the emissions. It exists as a global problem because everyone is affected by that climate change in essence. So if your argument is to say we don't emit a lot, therefore we don't need to commit to climate solvency, we think that is false, and that is not a policy that policymakers in this room should be using as a metric to judge this debate. But let's talk about what we give you in our case. Panel, we think there are 2 key things that we have to answer that were needed to be answered in this debate. 1, who reaches and who achieves universal energy access better and who reaches the common man better. I think I'm going to show you what on our side makes us better comparatively in how we meet that universal access. But also the second question is who achieves better global and international financing and who gets much more buy-in in terms of what their policy looks like. Because we think we all to understand one thing. Because we exist as a fundamentally developing nation, we don't have a lot of financing to back us on our part. It means in most of our policies, we heavily rely on international aid and international support. Not to say that we don't have our own, but it's to say that because there is a lot of global financing that exists, we want to be charitable in how we interact with that. I think at a point where they don't get that, they comparatively become unfair. Yeah. Taken.
Okay, the problem is on your side of the house, you are vouching for Zimbabwe to be good in the international community so that they get funding from elsewhere. From outside of the house, we want Zimbabwe to work with coal so that it has its own money, it doesn't need funding from elsewhere.
That's the problem. You think that people needing global finance means that they're independent, they're dependent. I think everyone needs global financing. United States needs global financing. Literally, they have debts to everyone. I don't think the problem here is on dependency. I think the problem here is, I think the idea here is who achieves better. On our side, we give you better universal energy access, but secondly, we give you better access to a financing pool that is greater. But we also anchor on already existing policies that already exist in Zimbabwe, and we achieve that universal access. Let's tell you on argumentation why we are very much better. We think we already have existing policies like the least cost geospatial electrification plan, which is the technical basis for the national electrification strategy of 2025 to 2030, which already identifies that they are unconnected households that exist right now. 91.1% of households in Zimbabwe are unconnected to the grid that exists. And the problem here is on twofold. One is because there is no extension of like grid pipelines that reach certain households. But secondly, it's because majority of those households are in rural communities where there are not grid substations in the first place. On your side as government, you needed to show us how that grid extension is going to look like if you're going to defend that form of like universal access using like core. The comparative on our end is we much more rather vie into a policy that ensures that we create much more decentralized mini-grid systems that exist in communities that cannot be reached by the same grids that you are advocating for. The impact here is very, very simple. One, on probability. I think on opposition we are better able to reach reach communities that are unconnected because our policy vies for something like decentralized mini-grid systems, solar systems that can exist within communities that cannot be reached by the grid lines that you guys are vouching for. So on probability alone, we win comparatively better. But in terms of magnitude and the scale to which our impacts are comparatively much more better than you, we think we exist better because we reach better communities on our end. You failed to prove that. Secondly, we tell you who unlocks global financing better. There already exist carbon markets that exist in the world right now, and Zimbabwe is also part of those people. NDC3, we think we are the only country in Africa that was able to meet the deadline on like NDC3 or on the NDC3 in the first place. This shows you something. We are a country that is committed to aligning ourselves and positioning ourselves as like spearheaders of the climate problem. So even if we are not emitting a lot, we are aligned in what the globe is also doing. But because there also exist mechanisms like carbon trading and blended climate finance, we get it better on our end because it means that our policies are much more aligned to the incentives of those very finances. I think we comparatively do better than you. We also tell you we reach the common man better. 3 policies that already exist that Noma highlights. The LGCEP, that is the least cost geospatial electrification plan that we are able to anchor on. Secondly, the carbon trading markets that already exist that we buy into as a Zimbabwe nation currently. We are able to anchor it on our end. But thirdly, the Southern African power pool that exists right now, and us also being like a co-owner of things like the Bakota project or the Bakota hydroelectric project. Why is it important? It's important because on our end, we're better able to diversify that form of like regional alignment by aligning with countries that are like around us. Yeah, you need the point of information.
Okay. Do you think that people like that are part of this global community, let's say in the United States of America and funding these programs that you talk of, they care about people in tuition that don't have like access to this grid? And why should the government join them in not caring?
Listen, I don't think this debate is about whether people care or not. This debate is about what policies and how policies shape the country in essence. Because a policy exists and there are things like the Paris Agreement that exist on the climate problem. It means you position yourself as individuals that also care about the climate problem. I think that form of signaling alone is enough for us to win on top of you guys. We think you are unable to win on those metrics. So at the end of the day, what do we give you? We give you 2 things. We are better able to reach the common man because we are most likely going to have like better decentralized mini-grids that exist in place. But secondly, we are better able to globally align with individuals, to globally align with like countries that have already aligned to the climate problem. But also, we are better able to unlock more financing. I think you needed to do a lot of things, University of Zimbabwe. You are home, but you're losing there. Never been proud to oppose. Yeah.
Oh, you broke it in. So ladies and gentlemen, students and minds of tomorrow, today you've just seen the heat, almost like a husband-wife having a debate over what's for dinner. It's cooking in the kitchen, people. Adjudicators, are you ready? All right. The people of Zimbabwe represented herein, are you ready? Okay, we're going to get ready for a vote, but I'd like our adjudicators to come forward now if they wouldn't mind and perhaps tally up some of your thoughts. Thank you. Beautiful to see young minds. Guys are looking wonderful. All right. Adjudicators, step forward. Let everyone see you. Thank you. Your verdict. May I ask your thoughts?
Okay, so first of all, the University of Zimbabwe was supporting the notion, and they came up with a dual-track solution whereby coal mustn't be completely phased out, but there are other motives that can be sustained to actually support coal, such as water, wind, and coal. And then NUST, they were saying, we would want to phase out coal completely. We would want to phase out coal completely, but then what if you phase out coal completely? Like, they didn't provide as to what solution can be put in place if coal is put aside. I don't know, maybe it's just me.
Okay, so there's questions of thought there. Next adjudicator.
Is it just me? It's just me, right? Thank you very much. Thank you. You say no. Some people are saying no. Is it just me? Some people are saying no, some people are saying yes, but that's actually good because that's debate. So I would like to hear from you guys, right? But before we give you guys the chance, other adjudicators are going to give you what they think, and we want you to vote. Is that fair? Is that fair?
It's very fair.
Very fair. Because
Very fair.
I have used it in NAST beside me, and I'm from MSU.
Thank you. So as we get ready for the next adjudicator, if I could at this time, please ask NUST and UZ representatives to please come forward. Let us see your beautiful faces and minds. If we could have one on the right and one on the left so we have no debate as to who you're voting for. Could you go to my right, sir? Thank you.
Good morning. Yeah, now one's about debate. Good morning. Good. Saka, I'm just going to read the debate topic. All right, can we be silent now so that we can proceed? Thank you. So I'm going to read out the debate topic so that when you guys vote, you vote from a point of being informed. And it's right. So our debate topic was accelerating green energy, and it's read, Zimbabwe should prioritize universal energy access and industrial growth while accelerating the transition to renewable energy, regardless of the global call to phase out coal use. Right, so I'm going to give it to Russell, who is going to facilitate the voting from the public. Please make sure that you vote, okay?
Before Russell votes, he's from NAST, and Tom is from UZ. Disclaimer.
All right, here we go, folks.
1, 2. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, could you speak a bit lower? We can't hear you.
All right, can we move forward? Thank you.
Someone's trying to turn you off.
All right, thank you so much for this opportunity. Well, firstly, I would like to highlight that it was an incredible tight debate and a highly critical issue for Zimbabwe's future. Both UZ and NAST brought their absolute best, presenting powerful fact-driven cases that perfectly justify their respective stances. Though UZ ran away from the notion, I would like to leave the crowd to vote. We are not picking a winner, but we would like to select something that is factual, something that is aligned with our vision as Zimbabwe. In this journey that we are as a nation, that we are taking together, that we are actually in as a nation, our journey to Vision 2030. We need something that aligns with NDS 2. We need something that actually enforces the successful NDS 1. So let's pick a side, not a winner. Something that we all know will be best for the country. Thank you.
Here we go.
UZ was supporting the motion, and the team supporting this motion was arguing for national interests, energy security, and their core stance is that Zimbabwe must put its own people and economy first. Team NAST was against the motion. The team opposing this motion was arguing for global climate alignment, long-term sustainability, and economic foresight. Are we ready to vote? Are you sure we're ready? Can you hear me in the back? All right. Team use it. All right, so we're going to raise our hands. Are we together? Can we all raise our hands on it before we start voting? Can we all raise our hands, guys? Like I said, we are picking something that is best for Zimbabwe. Team UZ.
Team UZ, raise your hands if you are for Team UZ. Hands now.
For the motion.
For the motion.
All right, thank you. You're not voting. All right, Team NAST.
Team NAST.
Thank you so much. Like I said, something that is best suitable for Zimbabwe. And after hearing both speak, I think the solution from NAST clearly aligns with what we want as a nation.
Adjudicators, thank you. Thank you, Zimbabwe. Thank you, NAST. Robust debate, fantastic. You know, folks, that's what it's all about. You're talking about our future. And there's great sides, but you decide, and we best decide by doing things right, and that's what we're about to find out in a few moments. I'd like to welcome the child president, Tinashe Mugondi. Thank you so much for being here. Tinashe, we'd love to hear a few words from you right now in the context of our environment, youth, and where we're going as we control our destinies by doing what we can today. Would you please give a warm welcome to Tinashe?
You may be seated. Honorable Ministers, here represented, the Vice Chancellor and leadership of the University of Zimbabwe, distinguished guests, teachers, parents, and my fellow students, good morning to you all. Before I dive into my speech, I might say that I'm really pleased and privileged to be part of this great event, and also the robust debates that I've been seeing. So if you're not in any way associated with witchcraft, I think you agree with me that let's give the two schools a round of applause. It is with great honor and privilege to stand before you today as the child president of the Republic of Zimbabwe. Today we gather not only to talk about climate change, but to become part of the solution. Climate change is not just an issue for adults. It affects us all. It affects our schools, our homes, our farms, our water, and our future. As children, we may be young, but we are not young to make a difference. Every great journey begins with one small step. We can plant trees, keep our surroundings clean, reduce wastes, save water, and encourage others to protect our environment. The theme of this summit reminds us that we must work together to build a better and greener Zimbabwe. Government, schools, communities, businesses, and young people all have an important role to play. When we work together, we can achieve great things. I am happy to see the learners from primary school, secondary school, colleges, universities gathered in one place. This showed that the future of Zimbabwe is indeed secured. We are one generation with one responsibility to protect the planet we have. I encourage every school to establish environment clubs, promote recycling, plant more trees, and teach learners about climate change. Small actions done by many people can create a big impact. To my fellow children, let us become ambassadors for the environment. Let us lead by example. Let us show that leadership is not being young or old, but it is about taking the responsibility of one's nation. To all leaders and partners, thank you for believing in the young people and giving us a platform to speak. Your support inspires us to dream bigger and work harder for a sustainable future. Together, let us build a Zimbabwe where every child grows up in a clean, healthy, safe environment. Together, let us protect our nature, ourselves, and for generations to come. Thank you. God bless you all. God bless Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Child President. Earlier today, we canvassed the students of this great institution and those represented here to see what their thoughts would be for a greener and brighter tomorrow, something that could be in our hands. And so I'd like now to ask, which is not on the program, the students, the pupils, and the young people that I've spoken to already to please come forward, because we're about to present an idea, an ideal that was rooted actually many, many years ago. You'll find it in the book of Genesis as we bring out that scripture. But first, take a look at the young people of this nation. Give them a hand.
Now, earlier today, we went out, didn't we? And what did we do?
We talked about how we can, as Zimbabwean youth, to save climate change and also ensuring that we, as Zimbabweans, we ensure a better future and environment for our wildlife and for us too.
So, can you hear us? Is the mic okay? All right. What did we see and what did we say?
Zimbabwe students charter, a new climate of real initiative. We, the students of Zimbabwe, join together with our government, our universities, our civic society, our mining, agricultural, and financial sectors. This includes our environmental, water, and international bodies, corporate, and those committed to practical transformation of our environment into a better place of Zimbabweans.
Show me, don't tell me is our theme. It starts with 3 simple projects, so we commit ourselves to implementing radical environmental protection and grassroots goals to preserve and promote our Zimbabwean environment for future generations.
Starting now, we applaud Her Excellency, the First Lady, for being the first to champion this new climate of next generation involvement.
Ladies and gentlemen, the youth of tomorrow, the youth of today. Give them a hand. So what we did is we gave a charter and we said, this is in process. This is how ideas become ideals, folks. AI cannot replace you doing this. A climate conference somewhere beyond our nation may not be able to quite touch the heart point, the head point, and the help point of what we need to do to transition this nation. And so, we had you sign, if you so wished. I can tell you the support is overwhelming. If you haven't signed yet, we'd love your signature because we want to take this into a partnership, which I'll talk about going further. But first, you as a young child in this nation, what are you sensing and what are you feeling as you've seen what we've done so far?
When I look at tomorrow, I see a generation that is shaped by our environmental choices that we make today. I believe that as a young generation, we have a big and beautiful impact that we can do tomorrow, not just on climate change, but on the environment choices that we do. We are Zimbabwe, we are the future, and we are the leaders. I believe we can make it. Thank you.
Phenomenal. So folks, I'm going to have these beautiful young minds and lives just show you. If you haven't signed yet, you're welcome to get it. This is what we'd like to do. We understand that the debate is very robust. We don't have necessarily all the answers, but I know this. If we don't put our hands to where our heads are, and if we don't align our hearts, it's going to be another conference, and our students of tomorrow won't get some of the pictures you're about to see. But don't take my word for it. Our mandate as human beings of every race, and there's just one race, many humans, but one race, is from Genesis 12 to tend the garden, right? Take care of it, and tend it. You can take a look at that, and you can see it for yourself. So we're doing something that, whether you believe it or not, is created in us, and we can do something. So I'm proposing 3 things. 1, we have a water crisis with rivers. Not far from us is the Missouri River. 2, we have a mining crisis with the Lula and other Makorokojas doing things. We're not going to stop it. There has to be a dollar made. But that's not far from us either. That's Missouri. And 3, we have a farming crisis, where energy for tobacco, for example, is 10 times the value of that in kgs, which is being sold. So we're going to have to destroy more trees than you can ever imagine into your lifetime just to get that valuable dollar. Question: if we were to partner with UZ or anybody else, get some buses and go out there, meet the people on the ground, take this conference to the people, with the young people of tomorrow, so we can understand what their moms and dads are going through to make a dollar, do you think we could have an impact to possibly finding a rational solution? Do you think it's a good idea? Well, what can we do? Are we going to leave it all to government, all to foreign governments, or all to some other organization? I don't know the answer, but I think we've got to do something with our heads, hearts, and hands. So young people, thank you. Show them the charter, and we'll see if we do something from there. Give them a hand, folks. Thank you for your signatures. Now, we're going to speed things through. One of the greatest conservancies in the world is right here in our own backyard, Save. And today, what a privilege to have some of the representatives of that great organization here to help us. Clive, thank you. I think you're not far away. We'd love to hear an ideal that you bring us. You talked about a donut. I didn't quite get it, but I think we will. Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome the young Clive as he comes forward? And as he does, I'd like to acknowledge Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife, Mr. Love Modoba, thank you so much for being in presence. University of Zimbabwe, Dr. Mukaro, and the Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science and Technology Development, thank you for your support today. And all of this, folks, has been brought to us by a young man called Ben. You'll see him later. Sometimes the great minds, the great people aren't always in the forefront. They're in the background. But I'd like you to now welcome a man who is on the ground, working with people, working with conservation, working with the very things we're talking about, but he's got some intriguing ideas. I think it's worth a listen. Welcome. Can you go from here? Clive, as you get ready, I know you've got some amazing points to show us on the PowerPoint. Just tell us a little bit about Save. Some of us may not understand just how powerful that conservancy is.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Clive Meekin. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of the Save Valley Conservancy. Now, the Save Valley Conservancy stretches from Birchenough Bridge down to Chiredzi in the southeastern Lowveld. At its maximum, it's 3,500 square kilometers of Zimbabwe. It's a massive piece of our country. It's unique in many respects. It's the home of the big five, the animals that the world wants to see, the animals that the rest of the world tells us that we have to look after on their behalf. I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. It's also unique because it was one of the first private conservancies in the world, created here in Zimbabwe with Zimbabwean ideas. This is something that we've led in. Other countries, including the United States and Australia, have copied our constitution, our charter, in the creation of conservancies of their own. We're a world leader in this field. That's something that we can all be proud of. The Savi is also probably one of the most diverse conservation experiments on planet Earth. Why do I say that? It's because of our members. The Savi is a membership organization, and it started off just with private individuals. Private individuals and BIPAs, the Bilateral Investment Protection Agreements. These were the founding members of the Savi, but over the years it's changed. We have a community conservancy run by a community trust. We have 2 rural district councils that participate with their own land that they've put into the Savi Valley Conservancy. We have ADA. These are all different branches of the government, of the people of Zimbabwe, and they are all members of the Conservancy. On top of that, we wouldn't be able to function without national parks. National Parks holds the custodianship of 13 properties within the Conservancy and is a vital member of our family. So when I talk about the Savi Valley Conservancy, I'm not talking about the interests of a small group of people. I'm talking about the interests of Zimbabwe, representing the interests of the world. So thank you. I'm going to stand upon the protocols that have already been introduced. I don't have to thank everybody and greet everybody. I hope that's acceptable. My area of expertise is wildlife and the wildlife economy, but I'm not going to focus more on that today. One quick thing for everybody, and incidentally, I'm going to be asking the floor a lot of questions just to keep you awake. So one quick thing. What percentage of large animal biomass is made up of wild animals? Does anybody have an answer to that? No one? No guesses? Let's have a guess. What percentage of large animal biomass is made up of wild animals? Simple question. Not even a guess. Okay. Do you know that 60% of large animal biomass worldwide is us? It's people. 60% of every single large animal on the planet by mass is people. Another 36% is made up of domestic livestock. What does that leave for the wild world? Okay? 36%, that is a lot, and a lot of cows. That leaves just 4% for everything else. All the whales, the elephants, the chimpanzees, all of our iconic species now make up just 4% of our living animal world. That's a little fact that you guys can take away on our wildlife resources. Now, I was also asked here initially to talk about community conservation. It's really important, but I'm not really going to do that either. Our communities are going to be hit the hardest by the now present climate crisis, and yet they have had the least to do with causing it. The most disadvantaged people in the world are disadvantaged in every manner and are clearly not drivers of the global issues facing the very survival of our species. The issues that the richest and most privileged have caused for everybody and every being on planet Earth. The climate crisis that we are entering is being caused by the unsustainable use of our global resources. Okay? We get that. But what does that actually mean? What does unsustainable mean? I'll get back to that. First, who in this auditorium has children? Please raise your hands. Okay, not many of us. Who in this auditorium, I know it's young people, are planning on having children? Add your hands to those. Bring your hands up. Okay, who in this auditorium are children of somebody else? Okay, we all have a vested interest in the future. I had to dig a bit to get to that, didn't I? We all have a vested interest in the future. It's a personal interest, isn't it? Unsustainable use literally means the theft of resources from our children and from their children. When we use our resources unsustainably, we are taking them away from future generations. When we talk about things like sustainable development, we're starting to push onto a little bit of an oxymoron. Development is a word that is quite difficult to separate from growth. Are we talking about sustainable growth? Fundamentally, okay. But We are in a finite environment. Nothing can grow forever in a finite environment. So what we are proposing when we start talking about sustainable development might be very close to unsustainable, infinite growth. And this is something that we need to pull out of this discussion today. Now, why would we steal from our children? Well, we obviously have a personal responsibility in this crisis and a personal imperative to change our resource utilization. So what is the most impactful thing that we can all do personally in the face of this crisis? If I told you that agriculture alone is responsible for somewhere between 22 and 30% of all carbon emissions and more than 80% of all land conversion, it becomes clear that changes to what we eat and how we eat are capable of making enormous changes to our personal carbon footprints. We must vote with our plates and with our pockets. What do we buy? But what should we vote for? What is the correct choice? What if I told you that a certain type of agriculture produces less than 14% of Africa's calorie requirements, yet uses up more than 80% of Africa's agricultural land? Crazy, right? Does anybody know what that is? What agricultural choice produces 14% of our food, measured by calorie, yet uses 80% of our land? Does anybody have any idea? A little bit of audience participation? A guess? Beef. Okay, the lady is 110% correct. It is the livestock industry. The livestock industry uses 80% of the agricultural land in Africa and produces 14% of our food. How mad is that? Agriculture is responsible for almost all land conversion globally. We are currently eating our environment and our life support mechanisms. This land conversion directly drives deforestation. Zimbabwe's rate of deforestation is hovering around 3% per annum, one of the highest in the world. That's not a statistic we can all be proud of. The most impactful choice that you can make personally for the future of your children, the future of all children, is to take animal products out of your diet. Become a vegan. Yeah. Not only is this diet the most sustainable choice, it's also the healthiest. Think, no cholesterol, no saturated fat, no hormones, no antibiotics. Can anyone here help me to explain trophic levels? It's a university, someone can help. Trophic levels. Wow, okay. Thanks for the participation, guys. Trophic levels explain the concentrations of energy in the environment. Primary producers make calories out of sunlight. So, grass is a primary producer. Primary consumers eat those producers. So, a cow is a primary consumer. One step higher up the trophic level. If we eat the cow, then we're a secondary consumer or a tertiary consumer. You can see that lots and lots of grass supports a few cows, which support even fewer steaks. So that's how trophic levels work. That's why the vegan diet is the most sustainable diet for the future of the planet. If we choose to eat lower down in the trophic levels, we require less from our own environment. If we eat a calorie of grain, we gain the energy. An animal needs hundreds of calories of grain to produce a calories worth of meat, eggs, or milk. So, personal change. Now, personal changes are important, but a planet full of vegans is not going to be enough. Why do we steal from our children? What is the thought process that goes into this? Our economic model and global inequality are inextricably linked, and these drive our poor choices when it comes to sustainability. Last question for the audience, I hope. I hope I get an answer. When was the most unequal period in the history of humanity? Simple questions, guys. When was the most unequal moment in the history of humanity? It's right now. You are living in the most inegalitarian period in human history. We have trillionaires and billionaires balanced against billions in poverty. Welcome to capitalism. If you're sitting in this room, you're probably amongst the richest 1% on the planet. Now, I'm not saying you don't have your own financial issues, okay? It's just the difference between your access to capital and that of the majority of the human species is insurmountable. I urge everyone in the room to read the World Inequality Report 2026, which is available online. Okay, I can't remember the figures off the top of my head, but if you or your family can access somewhere in the region of about 400,000 US dollars, and that means being able to borrow it from a bank, you are in the wealthiest 1% of humanity. It's actually a very low bottom line, isn't it? 99% of people have less access to capital. It gets more crazy once you start looking up the levels. The richest 10 humans on the planet this year own almost 50% of the world's capital assets. And us, the richest 1%, we own more than 90% of everything else on this planet. Okay? This is the driver of our climate crisis. The belief that the accumulation of capital is equivalent to success. The idea that infinite growth is possible in a world of finite resource. Silly idea, really. There are better ideas. There are better economic models, and we're going to look at one later. First of all, I want to talk about carbon credits, because these are a relevant example of how our current financial models are failing our species, and therefore, all species. The idea that we can continue to extract fossil resources without end, and that we can just pay a guilt tax, is directly designed to continue to make the rich richer, with little benefit to those who will suffer the most from the impending crisis. Okay, I know this is contentious, so let me explain. We pull fossil carbon out of the ground and then use a carbon credit to, okay, something positive, maybe plant a tree. Cool, eh? Unfortunately, we've now pulled this fossil carbon back into our biosphere. That's where we live, where everything lives. The trees that are supposed to extract the carbon from our atmosphere are also members of that same biosphere. They're not replacing the carbon underground, are they? That carbon is now held in our biosphere, mounting and mounting and mounting. Carbon credits just allow us to use more fossil carbon with a cleaner conscience while making even more money, even more capital creation. Okay, this is capitalism at work. So, I mentioned better models. Let's just have a think about better models. Let's have a look at one of them. Imagine, first of all, that an economic model is just that. It's an idea. It's a story that we tell ourselves. We can tell different stories. We have to tell better stories. If our children are going to survive long enough to have children of their own, we have to be able to tell better stories. So, one of the stories that I would like to leave you with today is the idea of donut economics. Is not my idea. This is also well researched and available to anyone that wants to dig deeper online. I urge you to do so for your children. The idea of donut economics is that all resources are finite. There are planetary boundaries to the utilization of every resource, be it fresh water, clean air, biodiversity, and the negatives, the production of carbon, the production of pollution, the production of waste products. If you use too little of these resources, you fall into the center of the donut. You're not in the sweet spot. You're not in the baker's in bit, in the middle. However, if you use too much of a resource, if you pollute the air too much, for example, you also leave the donut. You're out of the sweet spot. You've exceeded your planetary boundary for that resource. So this might be at a personal level, it might be at an organizational level. How do we implement the idea of donut economics? It's actually surprisingly simple. If you set up taxation bands based on resource utilization, so if you choose to use more of a certain resource, you get taxed more and more. Imagine that eventually the taxation levels become so punitive that it's simply no reason to exceed that planetary boundary. This could work at business levels too. Large businesses using more and more, and let's be honest, they use too much of the planetary resources, would become unviable because of taxation. The system, that donut economic, would favor household level businesses, lessening and eventually removing the inequality. No one would be too rich, but no one would be left to fall into the center of the donut either. This is an economic model that works for everybody. Is this possible? Well, of course it is. All we have to do is to change everything. Change our sustainability, improve our household resilience, and solve global inequality, all by changing to a better story. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm finished.
Thank you, Clive. Before Clive goes, folks, the dyadic is that this might be such an extreme idea that we dismiss it. But think about the best points. I'm certainly going to enjoy a great steak tonight, but it won't take away from me thinking about what you've just talked about and how can I be part of that ecosystem of doing something. So we will be doing something with our heads, hands, and hearts. Thank you, Clive, and thank you to Save for an incredible job that you're doing in the Conservancy. Thank you, Clive. And now, folks, didn't I tell you earlier that sometimes the biggest names in this nation are names you're not going to see on a podium? They don't like to be seen, they just like to do. Am I lying to you? Some of the biggest performers in our nation, you wouldn't even recognize them, and you wouldn't even see their car as being a status symbol. The next individual is the reason we're here. And I'd like you to do something. Because I knew this growing up as a young boy in Marlborough and going to schools not far from here. That when you give honor, you're sowing honor into your own life. When you stand up and be counted, when you step out, you're going to make a difference in your life, as opposed to being a partaker of a seat. I want you to be standing and give this next man a standing ovation, because without him we wouldn't be here. Ben, stand up and be counted, because I know you don't want to be on the podium. But ladies and gentlemen, would you stand up and welcome Ben? That's it, just Ben. Now Ben, before you fire off with so many incredible ideas, take a look. Ben, stop a second, my friend. I do this for a long generational amount of time. Look at all the people you've brought together today. Folks, just give him a hand. You don't know the pressure and the pain that it takes to break out. But I'm going to let you hear from him. This man wants to do something that will touch the next generation. And I'm just going to throw you one word. And now this will capture your attention before we sit. If I threw you that Ben was $100 million man, would you now look at him differently?
I'll look at myself differently.
What about if he's a $200 million man? 3? Do you understand how many hundreds of millions of dollars go into funds that he's about to start? But his focus is you. And if we ever just see the money only, we're going to miss the meaning. So Ben, give us the meaning of why we're here today. Thank you for putting this together. Thank you, folks. Be seated.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the Permanent Secretary representing the Minister of Harare Metropolitan Province, Senator Ravengo. Thank you. Thank you, students. The first thing that I'm going to request is I just want you to clap hands for yourself for acknowledging yourself and making it here to this summit. Gary, I always like to interact. That's why the anchor of this summit is about interaction. Africa has got 1.5 billion people, and the majority of them are youth. And by 2050, 1 in 3 people in this world, in the workforce of the world, will be African. 1 in 3. It is the students. It is these leaders. The future is today, not tomorrow. The climate commitments of this country are custodians of these students. So I want you to clap hands for yourself for just making it here tonight. I mean tonight, this afternoon actually, because I slept late. So by waving of your hands, can I see the the students from primary and secondary education, just look at the back. Okay, I know you're a bit short here. You can stand up and say hi to everyone. I want you to hear say hi. No, you're not primary. So please, let's clap hands for them. They have made it. They have taken time. Because climate is not just a conversation, it is our future. Please, you may sit down. One of the things that got me and my team to think was because Zimbabwe currently is the chairperson of the COP15, the Ramsar. And when I went to Victoria Falls, I was astounded. It was on our land. It was on our terra firma. But there were no students. The room rates that would ordinarily be $70 US, they went up to 400 United States dollars, meaning that the students were excluded. When I went to Azerbaijan, to the COP, I saw students from Oxford University. I saw students from Harvard University. I didn't see students from the University of Zimbabwe. I didn't see students from NAST University, either from Africa University. Why? Because Africa and our resources are excluded. But we are the lung of the world. And carbon has given us that resource for us to monetize and to empower you, the students, to be able to participate at a global stage. Airlines, industries can pollute, but the solution is lying here in Africa. Africa has got the biggest arable land in the world. But it is you, the university students, it is you, the students, that have got the knowledge and the capacity to propagate the trees. I'll give you an example. If we have 200,000 artisanal miners that have got to timber their mine, how many trees are we likely to be losing a day? Wild guess? And who is replacing those trees? I was interacting with my trees. One indigenous tree is $3 US. And it takes years. Companies have got a high demand of carbon credits. So if a company has got to offset millions and tons of carbon emission offsets, I'll give you an example. The Emirates airline just reported that they need 129 billion by 2030 worth of carbon emissions. Somebody's got to plant those trees. Trafigura, they've already invested 600 million United States dollars, taking care of only 632,000 hectares of land. There is an opportunity for the students, for someone to propagate the trees. The demand for trees is there. Right now we are rehabilitating almost 18 of our rivers. There is need to replant 20 million trees. Where are we going to get those trees? It's an opportunity for the university students to stand up. Whilst the companies will demand, you have to be able to supply. It's a law of supply and demand. So there is an opportunity. This is our time. I acknowledge the government of Zimbabwe. Just 2 days ago, the president appointed a president advisor on sustainability. That's a big move. That's a big intent. And I want to ask a question. By raising of hands, how many of the students here have been on the website for ZIGMA? One? Okay, Gary. Right. So we've got only one person who has been on the website for ZIGMA. All right. How many people know in this room what ZIGMA is?
ZIGMA.
ZIGMA, yeah. How many? ZIGMA? We got one? 2? We got 2. So maybe Gary will just give a mic to, so that.
All right. Illuminate our minds.
I hope it's correct. Zimbabwe Carbon Marketing Authority.
Brilliant.
There we go.
Let's clap hands for you.
There's always that one student in class that's always putting their hand up.
Right. So my second question is, ZICMA. Under which ministry does ZICMA fall? Can someone show me by, not you again. So I've got 1. Anyone from primary schools? Under which ministry does ZICMA fall? 0. University students? I've got 1. I've got 2. I've got only 2 people. Do we have an extra mic? Gary?
Yes, we do.
Yes. So there's someone who suspects that they know. Yeah, I think. Right. So the question is, under which ministry does ZICMA fall under? So we only got 3 people in the room that know. Yeah, please go ahead. Clap hands. My point exactly. The Emirates Airlines has got a demand of $129 billion worth of carbon credits. ZICMA is our platform for Zimbabwe, the first blockchain in the world to be able to do exchange and transferable carbon credits with the gold standard. But in this room, we have less than 3 students that know about ZICMA. We have got less than 3 students that know that ZICMA falls under the Ministry of Environment, Climate and Wildlife. That is why we are in this room. That is the very reason why we are in this room. We need to move policy into the education. We need to gel the divide. These students are the human capital pipeline for Zimbabwe. Whether you're ICNIT, whether you're Delta, whether you're Air Zimbabwe, whether you're Mutapa Investment Funds, these are your employees. These are the students that are going to walk into your ESG boardrooms. They have to be ready. They have to be what? They have to be ready. So Gary, I don't want to go on a monologue.
I hear you, Ben. If I may, if we could make this a lecture environment, I'm just going to pick on someone, because that's what I love to do. Usually a beautiful, handsome male or female. In this case, young man, you're a prefect, come. Yeah, here, come. All right. Ben, you might need to answer this, man, and help me understand it.
Okay.
How on earth can we connect the dots from the UAE, blue carbon, and anything else that they've bought into or not bought into, millions of dollars to come, living in Africa long enough to know that he is certainly not high on the totem pole to get that dollar? How can we convert what you're saying at that podium so that this young man can benefit because we have a better environment? And then he's going to comment that you won him over or not. Tell me, don't show me. Or show me, don't tell me. Let's hear that.
Thank you, Gary. Number 1 is to educate. Number 1 is to innovate. We need to industrialize. And it starts at tertiary and education. The students have got to know what is blockchain. They need to know the legal frameworks of the carbon industry. They need to understand the 176 protocols available for them to make money.
But now, just to interject, Ben, you'll know that. I doubt that the prefect, Ronald Kamu, will know that. How can Ronald benefit from Zimbabwe being a better, cleaner, greener society?
Ronald.
Yes, sir.
Go on.
Ronald, do you think that you could benefit from a cleaner Zimbabwe, a better environment Zimbabwe? Is it a pipe dream? Because we're hearing that there's a lot of money out there that could be a benefit. Do you think it could ever benefit you or the other students? Or is this something that is just too far away in your mindset?
Oh, I think it's too far away.
It's
there we have it.
All right, Ronald, welcome aboard. So Gary, just whilst you're still there. Yes. So I see a lot of others from the middle aisle. I want to pose this question to this side. By raising of your hand, Does anyone know what IREX are? IREX. Yes.
It's a dinosaur that died in T-Rex.
Maybe someone knows. Maybe someone knows.
I've got a young man saying, is it like a bird?
All right, maybe. Anybody else? I'll give a clue. It's under ZIRA, Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority. ZIRA. Okay, pronounce
Okay,
it.
we're still none the wiser.
Okay? Anybody
We're
else?
still wondering
I've got my
any benefit.
Yes. Gary, you can come through. I've got my friend here, my colleague, Owen Mtero. Please, Gary. So before Owen weighs in, you can stand up, Mr. Mtero. Pause. So Mr. Mtero is a former graduate from NAST University. One of the few Zimbabweans that went on to list an institutional broking company on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Let's clap hands for him. I know you don't like bragging. Right, so before he educates us on IREX, he is from NAST University. So do I have NAST students? Thank you. Shoot on.
Thank you very much. Just quiet, pretending as if I don't know IREX. Anyway, so IREX are called International Renewable Energy Certificates. Basically, definition of renewable energy certificates is a measure of 1 megawatt hour of energy produced by a clean energy source. To give an example, for example, if a 5 megawatt hour energy capacity, solar capacity, if it runs for an hour, we say it will produce 5 megawatt hours of energy, which is the equivalent of 1 renewable energy certificate. So basically what then happens is that an incentive is then given for energy producers to produce renewable energy, to the fact that a price is put on a renewable energy certificate in the same sense, in the same context with what they do with carbon credits to incentivize. So basically, these renewable energy certificates are being traded in markets, financial markets.
Wonderful. Before you hand over the mic, so we've got millions of homes that have got solar panels. Are they eligible for IREX?
Yes, they are.
So by raising your hand, how many people are claiming IREX in this room for their solar? Let's clap hands for the gentleman. There's one. I'm just praying by, as the summit goes, we start having double digits. Yeah, I'm getting 3, 1, 3, 1. So, thank you, Owen.
I'll just add
You
that.
have to add.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add that.
Sorry, before you go on. So by raising your hand, how many students in the house have solar panels at your homes? Wow. Wow. Please, okay? Now you know that you can make money. You can continue, Mr. Mtero.
We launched the Zimbabwe Renewable Energy Certificates platform last year, where we are assisting energy producers and green energy producers to register, defining registration, issuance of IREX, and their trade. Thank you very much.
Are they trading successfully? Yes. Well, folks, we're going into some of the ethereal and some of the abstract that many of us here can't pull down and completely understand and conceptualize. Thank you, pioneers, for going forward. But I think, Ben, what's being said is that there is a conversion of money and power taking place, and we need to get in and do it at this grassroots level. So my question to you would be, just like we had the magnificent young man, Ronald, at the top there, how could a Mukorokozha benefit? How could we help a toxic river become less toxic? How could we do less curing of wood and tobacco needs given what you're talking about? Because it seems such a big subject. How could you break it down to us so that it actually could work and we could raise hundreds of millions of dollars on different bourses, and that money would actually go to helping people and actually promoting what you're talking about?
Okay. I actually touched that, yeah? Right. So let's talk about artisanal mining. We need gold. It's important that we have gold, but gold can be green. There is actually what is called green gold. This is gold that is mined sustainably. If we can create a balance between our ARR, which is afforestation, revegetation, we can actually offset the damage. We can actually offset the emissions from our mining industry. But it will take the students to actually work with artisanal miners to be able to do reclamation. So in that way, as we are replanting trees and reintroducing vegetation, the students can claim carbon credits. That means it's a win-win for both sides. The students make money on the vegetation, the artisanal miners support the anchor of this economy. There have to be that balance. That's why this meeting requires the fairest agents of now, not to be talking, but for action. So the same thing with tobacco. It's important that the companies invest in the students. We have students that are actually studying agriculture, looking for placements. So I've already postulated that there is a demand of over 100 million trees in this country. And one indigenous tree is $3. That's $300 million of demand out there. But it's working with the lecturers and the students to make sure that that balance and equilibrium can be reached. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ben. Folks, you can see a huge vision, and that's what visionaries have. Thank you. You know, when you get around Ben, things happen. I believe we have from the Office of the First Lady a wonderful representative. It's great to have you here, ma'am. Thank you. I think you're in the hall somewhere. I don't see you, but I know you're out here. Thank you. Now, we're going to come to a close, finish strong and early. But before we get to the vote of thanks by Dr. Mushaba, representing the Ministry of Provincial Affairs and Devolution, I would like also to bring in those that are doing things at an amazing level: community, the livelihoods of community, conservation, science, practical coexistence models. Would you welcome folks from the International Fund for Animal Welfare, Aleta Nyamui, IFAV, Landscape Conservation and Human Wildlife Coexistence. Aleta, welcome. You're one of our last speakers, but the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Thank you very much, Gary. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm not a very good speaker, like everybody else would speak off the cuff, but I have a presentation, just the pictures to show what is happening so that we use the other sense, which is not the hearing sense, but the eyesight. So I don't know, Gary, if this is coming. Thank you very much. That one, perfect, great. Ben, thank you very much. I think that was very abstract. It's pure science, but this is how we can contribute to the science that he was talking about. I'm just pulling down the policy. I'm pulling down the framework to a program, to reality. How do I contribute as an individual, as a community, as a student, and as different kind of institutions here represented. I am from IFO, the International Fund for Animal Welfare. It's an international NGO which is supporting government, in particular the Zimbabwe Parks Management Authority, to protect wildlife. Why? Because wildlife has a role in climate change. We are talking about a changing climate, but we also have a solution that's lying in the protection of wildlife, a solution that lies in the protection of forests as carbon sinks. So that's who we are, a global NGO, And we are operating in many countries, but in Africa we are in Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. Why are we here? So that animals and people thrive together. And see, how do I move? Oh, thank you very much. I think, why is it important for animals and people to thrive together? We look at rescue work. We look at conservation. Who does conservation? Animals cannot conserve themselves. We live adjacent to animals, so we must play that significant role as communities. Next slide. Yes. Where are we located as IFO in partnership with Zimparks? The largest national park, which you see that in red, Hwange National Park, which is housed to plus or minus 45,000 elephants. And if somebody does the mathematics of how much carbon elephants would sequester, and we have the second largest population in Africa after Botswana, what does that mean in terms of us having a big asset? So the capital asset which I'm talking about is the natural resource base, which is the elephant, and which is the forest that is adjacent. For Zimbabwe, it's important to know that 30% of the land is under protected area, which is those national parks and the gazetted forests. And it's important, it is our duty to make sure that we keep and maintain the integrity of those forests, the wildlife, so that we're able, one, to mitigate against climate, two, to earn a living out of it through ecotourism, three, for our generations to see what a lion or what an elephant looked like. So that is where we are operating in Hwange, Cholocho, and Lupane. Next slide. Why did we find it very necessary to come and support government? There are certain threats that are threatening this asset, this capital asset which I'm talking about. The biggest threat is the climate change. When temperatures change, they affect the biodiversity. They affect the integrity of our forests. This year, there's a prediction of a super El Nino. What does that mean? It means we have less rainfall. What does that mean? It means there is competition for water for the animals and the people. What does that mean? It means the home and the food for the animals is going to be reduced. And what does that mean? Eventually, it means we have less dollar on the table because we are losing the animal, we are losing the forest, and we have less that we can get from that forest. So climate change is one of the biggest threats, but if we protect the resource, we have a climate sink. When we have climate change, there is so much competition. We all have had, for sure, human-wildlife conflict. If you can show by raise of hands for the children, the students, if anybody who has heard about human-wildlife conflict, at least we see a good number. What is happening is there is people are conflicting with animals, there is competition. That's the other challenge. Why we needed to support and work with government to make sure that we minimize the impact of human-wildlife conflict. We have poaching threats. Imagine if your neighbor has chickens and you don't have chickens and you have drought, what comes into your mind? You really want to get the chicken from the neighbor. That's what comes into mind. So poaching is one of the issues that is affecting our biodiversity. People are getting into the forest to unsustainably harvest the resource for protein substance, for selling, and for different kinds of things. And so it is very important that for us, together with government and communities, protect this resource. The next slide. Next slide. I've already spoken about why Hwange matters. It's the largest national park, not downplaying Southeastern Lowveld, mid-Zambezi and everything. But this is where the largest elephant population is housed in Hwange. So it means we need to protect that. It's a big ecological zone. This Hwange National Park is a transboundary conservation area. It shares a boundary with Botswana. Animals are moving from Hwange into Botswana through those corridors. So you have heard about Kaza, Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area. This is the largest transfrontier in the world, 513,000 square kilometers. The largest transfrontier in the world is found here in Zimbabwe between and among the 5 countries, 5 member states that came together to agree to say, let's conserve our environment because of the benefits that we are going to get in the end. So this is an anchor zone in terms of the CASA and in terms of human-wildlife interconnection as well. We are not only connecting wildlife, we are also connecting people, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Zambia, Namibia. We are connecting cultures, we are connecting economies. So treat this transfrontier not only as an ecological zone, but as an economic zone. Within this zone, we have 3 million people that are residing. And imagine how much tourism is in Victoria Falls. All this is happening in the same transfrontier. So it's very important that we do what we are supposed to do. Next slide. Let's not worry about this. It's a threat-based strategy. I talked about the climate change. I spoke about human-wildlife conflict, and I spoke about the integrated or the fragmented landscapes, which is one of the biggest challenges. Why is it a challenge? If you have driven or flown from Hwange to Victoria Falls, you see that it's such a huge, vast landscape with so many different land uses, private owners, communities, forests, wildlife. But we are talking about a situation where the wildlife or the elephant has to move from Zimbabwe to Botswana, from Zimbabwe to Sebungwe, across and within communal areas. So it is very important that we create that balance. We have a situation where animals can move, people can grow their crops, people can sell their crops, people can plant their trees, and make sure that we are mitigating against the effects of climate change and also getting the economy. Can we have the next slide? Next slide. Just to show how and what we can do to make sure that we conserve and that communities are such a key pillar. I think the gentleman that spoke about survey conservancy was speaking nothing but the role of communities in conservation and why it is important. So what you see there is a boma behind there. It's simply an enclosure that protects livestock for people. Northwest Matabeleland is a dry region. So many farmers have livestock. And the livestock is their income. But they are living adjacent to a national park which is not fenced, which is open. So the lions are predating against the livestock. So we need to protect that livestock, and we protect the money. If you have 10 cows that are protected and the price of selling a cow is $500, it means you have protected $5,000 by simply putting that simple enclosure, which we call predator-proof bomas. And we have had hundreds of those in and around Hwange National Park. Climate smart agriculture, Ben spoke about it. The climate is changing. You need the food on the table. How do you make sure that you continue to get the same yield against a changing climate? You need to adapt. So that is one of the ways. This is a communal setup where people are putting up their irrigation and they are selling. Last year they sold 15,000 kgs of butternut to Victoria Falls. So these are some of the small initiatives, but when put together are going to create a huge impact in terms of mitigating climate and also protection of the environment. Next slide. What is the role of children in conservation? Catch them young. I will not speak more. We are supporting as IFO tuition support for children who are traveling more than 5 kilometers to get to school. We are providing them with bicycles so that they can ride. Look at the girl child who drops out of school because she cannot walk to school because she's afraid of the animal. So if you improve mobility, you are improving the chances of that child getting to the next layer, being the next investor on the carbon market in South Africa. By simply providing what you might think is very, very simple, is very meaningful to somebody. Those are textbooks for a new curriculum. The sharing ratio is one student would share 10, 15 students on one book. So if we are supporting with those textbooks, it means children have access to education, they have access to, they can be employed. And next slide, please.
All right, so just stop here a second, Aletta, because
Yes.
we can go through slide after slide. But I kind of sense there's an elephant in the room. And I know that you've got the integrity and the wisdom and the passion. You can see the passion she has, right, folks? So could we create a new climate of engagement that we actually leave here with something? And I ask you a question. First question comes to mind. Ben, you might want to interject. Why? Why, oh why? Could we not pay for the $3 of a new tree? $1 to the school, to the pupil who's planted the tree, $1 to the producer who found the seed, and maybe $1 other to the investors and the financiers and those on the chain. In other words, how could we get back to what Ronald was saying? He doesn't know how he can get a carbon credit to his back pocket. But through Ben and through his organizations and through partnerships, is there not a way that we could get $1 by $1? Like Child President, you said little steps make big impact. Can't we do something little? Just on reforestation, to get $1 so they can get a school book, for example, if they plant a tree. Please give us an understanding of how we can take this big global thing and make it local.
Super perfect. Thank you very much, Gary. So, the schools that we are working with, just for instance, it's 21 schools in and around Hwange. And we have nature clubs, environmental clubs for these schools. The intention is for each school to have 1 hectare of 1 hectare of plantation for each school. And if you are multiplying by the numbers of schools that are in Hwange, it automatically means you are creating a carbon sink that people, that schools can actually be able to access. So we have that facility.
Okay,
for
help us understand. So they've
Yes.
got an acre. Does it all get accumulated into one big park, or is it sporadic?
This is spread across. This is spread across. But what you want to also understand, Gary and Ben, is that if you get to a community like Victoria Falls, the Woodlands community, this is one good community where there is vast pieces of open land where communities can actually congregate, aggregate together, and do such initiatives where they can be able to trade in carbon, because climate financing has become the in thing. And we know for sure the challenge has been, what is my benefit? What do I get by protecting a tree? This is the debate that we should be talking and also thinking about. What is in it for me to protect a tree? So as long as the benefits are trickling to the person who is the custodian, the person who has the responsibility to look after that tree day and night, the moment that we create an environment where I know that a tree is $1, flushing food in the toilet is throwing $1 into the toilet. The moment we change that mindset, then we are getting where we want to in terms of responsibility and sustainability.
Folks, can you see the possibilities? It's beginning. It's at a seed level. But if we could, it's almost like a song. What's in it for me? I could plant a tree and I could find some prosperity. There you go. Don't you dare put that online, but you put that into a song. And let it close out right now.
Yes, okay, fine.
Do you have hope that with all of our combined efforts, we're not going to deforestate Wangi? We're not going to do to our eastern highlands what's happened in Mozambique with the hardwoods all gone. I understand what's happening here. Do you have hope that we're not going to have foreign nationals and beyond coming into Wangi and doing things that we need to coexist? We've heard those debates with power and energy and money, but is there a sanity that's coming that we could take the best of green and the best of being lean and then not being mean, but making $1? Are you hopeful?
110% hopeful, because we are the people, we can do it, the investment is in us, this generation, the generation to come, and I have 100% confidence that this is going to happen. If you can just run the pictures, nothing else, I won't be talking, but just run through the pictures so that you can see the possibilities of us. You see what you see there. That's Wange National Park, the picture that we see. This is a protected area, but adjacent to this protected area is a lot of degradation, where I am saying it is very possible for people, if they see that there is money in that forest, if we demonstrate that capacity, then it means in my village, they begin to see the importance of protecting that particular tree. And our carbon framework is very good. What is lacking is the means to implement. And that's why we are here as NGOs to also support this cause for us to access the carbon market and the carbon.
Aletta, fantastic. You're actually a great speaker. Could you give her a hand, folks? So Aletta, what I'd like you to do, if you wouldn't mind being upstanding, could you come and stand over here? There's a reason for it. Child President, could you come and stand and be upstanding? Thank you. Just stand here. Just give me a few moments of your time. Ben, would you be prepared to come forward and answer a few questions as we come to an end today? We're going to finish on time, folks. We're going to have some lunch together, and afterwards we'll come back and close out the day, and it's going to be very powerful. But I want to close with something, if you wouldn't mind. Vote of thanks, I believe we're getting that from you. Is that right, sir? Okay. Before you bring your vote of thanks, we want to thank you. Put your speech down, because we want you to see this. You come stand over here. And our young people from the charter earlier this morning, could I ask you to please come and be upstanding at the front? All 5 of you come quickly. And I want you to face this group, because this isn't just ceremonial. And yes, sir, you're not in the back, you're right in the front, as you represent so much. And do I have someone from University of Zimbabwe that could just stand at the front and be a recipient? You're a handsome man, you look much more erudite than me. Come, sir. Could you face the crowd? All right, young people, you can line up there for a second. But folks, what I'm seeing today, isn't there some incredible, not just intellectual exchange, but a real heartbeat that says we can do this together. Thank you, Ben, for what you've done, and thank you that this is the beginning, not the end. But I'd now like to present each one of you with something. And you're going to take it back. And what you do with it is up to you. You can scrunch it up and throw it away, or you can value it, because each signature means something. Young people, come forward. Could you please grab one of these fully endorsed charters and show it to camera, and then to the people that you're going to give it to. Hold that up for everybody to see. And would you read this out again? I'll hold it for you. Because I think we can do something together. I don't know what it'll be, but I think it'll be something significant. Just read out.
We, the students of Zimbabwe, join together with our government, our university, our civil society, our mining, agricultural and financial sectors. This includes our environment, our environmental, water and international bodies, corporates and those committed to the practical transformation of our environment into a better place for Zimbabwe.
Right, stop. Wait. That's one generation. Now, sir, we didn't plan this. I know it's protocol. You can't fire me. I'm already fired. Could you read the next 3 lines?
Show me, don't tell me, is our theme. It starts with 3 simple projects. So we commit ourselves to implementing radical environmental protection and grassroots growth to preserve and promote our Zimbabwean environment
for future generations.
Thank you. I'll come to you later. Later.
Starting now, we applaud Her Excellency, the First Lady, for being the first to champion this new climate of next generation involvement.
And from you, sir, what thoughts are going through your mind with that erudite voice?
I'm flattered.
Unprepared speech.
Okay. I just want to say that climate change is a devastating issue that is upon us. And you and me, we have a say on what happens to our nation. So your contribution and my contribution and every contribution of everyone who is in Zimbabwe, be it this room, be it in other universities that are not here, counts to make a change to our nation. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that. Do you think that we could make a difference and start with these young people benefiting not just from the environment and carbon credits, but from us doing something and helping those that are on the run that can't help themselves?
Yeah, honestly, I think one of the most effective initiatives starts as early as from you. So anything that's going to be successful, best to start from you.
Thank you. It starts from the youth. So Ben, I close out today before we go to our vote of thanks. You want to say something? Of course you can. We're going to come to you, Ben. I'm going to give this to you and you'll see what to do with it. What did you want to say?
Thank you. It will be very unfair if I didn't speak about the work that we are doing with the students here at the University of Zimbabwe. Because of the challenge of human wildlife conflict, we have students, the Zimbabwe Youth, Climate Sustainability, and Community Development. Thank you. We are working with the students who are providing a solution and application for communities to be able to report human wildlife conflict. Can you imagine the change that is going to make if every community member has an application on their phone that they're able to respond and report that there is a conflict here and response mechanisms are done. And we are protecting the forest, we are protecting the animal, and everybody is involved. Thank you very much.
I can see the heartbeat. Thank you. Ben, I now present you this last fully subscribed document that says we're committed, we want to do something, and we so thank you for you stepping out, bringing in different partners to this illustrious environment. And all that remains is I'd like to have one last word from you before the vote of thanks, but what does this mean to you, and what would you close us out with this session?
Thank you, Gary. A journey of 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles starts with the first step. And I believe that today is our first step. Tomorrow someone will take the baton. But the one thing that I love about Zimbabweans is because we always start. I'm standing here with the Permanent Secretary for Harare Metropolitan Province, celebrating Geocommon, waste to energy. A huge project, a world benchmark project. We are humble, sir. We are humble, sir. So a journey of 10,000 miles starts with the first step. So this is our first step. I'm humbled with so many signatures that the students have appended on the charter. And we will definitely make sure that we, in absentia, we hand it over to the First Lady. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I think, Doctor, we would love to hear from you as you have a vote of thanks as we close out this morning session before lunch. It would be an honor to hear from you.
Good afternoon to all of us. Asa hatina kudya. Hatisati tadya nai? Okay. I can understand, but if you use the same energy to respond, we might make this faster so we can then get to the session where we do stomach business. Ndozokorora zvakare maskati. Thank you very much. I have been requested to provide a vote of thanks. Let me start by thanking the moderator, facilitator. I understand you go by the name Gary. I don't know whether that's shortcut for Gary Kai. Thank you so much for ably steering conversations. I really appreciate. I've learned one or two things, how to do things by engaging the participants. Let me also happily acknowledge staff from Office Yamai who are here. I want to thank you for your presence and for participating in the proceedings. Let me also thank Mr. Child President with a small p, appreciating your presence, sir, and your leadership in the conversations that have gone on. Our host, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Zimbabwe, Professor Dr. Paul Mapfumo, the Chief Executive Officer of ZSCS Organizing Committee, Mr. Benji Chimtengo, Mr. B as you are popularly affectionately called, the organizers who have worked tirelessly behind the scenes, the administrators of this wonderful institution, the financiers, promoters who have made it possible, the speakers who have made various presentations. I didn't know survey conservancy that much. I'm walking away with quite some good knowledge about how it is, how it's constituted, and the beautiful work that you are doing there. Thank you very much. The students who are here, some who are listening, some who are innovators, young and old, teachers and lecturers, private sector, we have come to listen to the ideas of the young generation, the University of Zimbabwe at large as hosts. I stand before you today as a representative of the Minister of State for Harare Metropolitan Province, Senator Charles Tawengwa, to give a vote of thanks. Unfortunately, he is not in the country at present, and that's the reason why he is unable to be with us. He would have wanted to be here in person to listen carefully to how the future of this beautiful country is going to turn out, given the marvelous solutions that are being exhibited inside this beautiful space as well as outside, and in the minds of our young innovators. Ladies and gentlemen, Harare Metropolitan Province is exceptionally proud to serve as the host for the inaugural Zimbabwe Students Climate Innovation Summit 2026. Inaugural, which means it's the first, it's the beginning. And as the organizer and facilitator has promised, it shall become an annual event. Congratulations, my brother, for the brains and for the good work you are doing. As the economic and administrative heartbeat of our nation, Harare Metropolitan Province recognizes that the urban challenges of today, be it waste management, clean energy deployment, or building sustainable infrastructure, requires radical, forward-thinking solutions. Sitting here inside the prestigious Diamond Conference Center and Innovation Hub at the University of Zimbabwe, it is clear that our higher education spaces are answering the national call under the Education 5.0 philosophy. The brilliant exhibitions on display outside, I believe, Mr. Facilitator, there will be opportunity for us to take a walk around and see what the young innovators are doing there. Combining government, ministries, departments, and agencies, industry leaders, academic institutions, grassroots communities, as ably represented by my sister. Thank you for the work you are doing in Hwange, here at the university, and in other communities. Proves that Zimbabwe is ready to serve as the ideal platform where policy meets youthful action in the search for solutions to climate change crisis. Distinguished guests, as the Secretary responsible for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, Harare Metropolitan Province, I am honored and particularly energized by the overarching vision of this summit. While Harare Metropolitan Province has the privilege of hosting this grand national gathering today, the strategy behind this summit represents the absolute essence of devolution. The visionary plan to establish localized thematic forums running at different provincial universities ensures that climate action is not centralized or top-down. It guarantees that a student in Matabeleland, a young innovator in Manicaland, or a farming community in the Midlands province has an equal voice. By running these provincial forums in between the main summit, we are actually democratizing climate literacy and ensuring that every province unearths its own green talent. Harare Metropolitan Province stands ready to proudly receive, support in the consolidation, and celebrate all those provincial inputs. Again, as the Office of the Minister of State for Provincial Affairs and Devolution, headquartered at John Boyne House, quite not too far from here, opposite Joiner City for those who may want to visit us, we provide overall leadership in public policy management, the promotion of good governance within the province. Our mandate is to coordinate, to facilitate, to monitor government policies, programs, and projects, and to ensure quality service delivery, socio-economic development, and improved welfare for the people of this beautiful metropolis. We are therefore excited that one of the challenges we confront, that of climate change and its impact, has a community of praxis, that is practice and as well as theory combined brings us praxis. And we look forward to receiving more information, more works, and more solutions from your day-to-day work as a community. Guided by our vision of a results-oriented government with a culture of culture of quality service delivery for all by 2030, and our mission to lead provincial government machinery in the formulation, coordination, and implementation and evaluation of development initiatives, we are proud that the Metropolitan Province was selected to host this important event, which has brought all of us together to learn from each other, to network, and to exchange on the brilliant ideas. I want to urge all delegates to feel at home in the province, take time to experience the hospitality of the province, engage in the incredible networks being forged here, and tap into the powerful human capital pipeline that our students represent. Once again, I commend the organizing committee and our hosts at the University of Zimbabwe for choosing this province for this inaugural event. Let me thank all the people who have contributed to make this a success. And lastly, thank you, Gary, once again, for ably steering this beautiful event. I thank you, and will look forward to taking a copy of the charter so I can hang it in the office and remember that we have committed to, yes, we can make the change that we seek. I thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mashaba. We appreciate you. Thank you, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we finished ahead of schedule because we've created the cultural climate of trust to go for one thing. Thank you, Ben. Great news. Food is being served. That's going to be wonderful. I think chicken in for most of us. VVIPs, we're upstairs. I hope I get that invitation, but if not, I'll join the debate team. You guys were fantastic. Give it up for our early morning debate teams. Thank you so much, universities, well represented. Nice to meet you. Now, in 1 hour's time, folks, we're back here. Go and see the exhibitions, enjoy a great lunch together, and then we've got a number of Bandura and other universities debating it out this afternoon to finish off the hot topics. All right, we'll see you back in an hour. Go and enjoy lunch. See you just now.